Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Thursday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We are going to be kind of really ramping up our Major League Baseball coverage here on Couch Potato Diary, which is as always presented by Sea of Dead. Celebrate the start of the baseball season with some slick Calgary swag. We got some awesome Calgary Cannons hats to get you started for the start of Major League Baseball's season. Also, if you need a little bit of fuel with baseball season coming up, check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PK Primetime for 25% off. Some awesome flavors that just help with the focus and the energy a little bit more. So check them out there. And if you want a bit of a discount, use the code PK Primetime. So full disclosure, if some of the stuff is a little bit dated that we're talking about today, I am taping this a couple of weeks ago, or I guess a week ago. I'm off in Japan as we speak. So if some of the things on this episode are a little bit wonky, that would be the reason why. But today, we're going to look at some of the teams that are overvalued in the Major League Baseball over-under wins projections this season. Going to look at 5 teams that I think have been overvalued a touch. Going to look at those, and then we're going to look at the Toronto Blue Jays. Who is going to bounce back for the Jays in this upcoming season? Also on the podcast world today, we're going to be looking at fights to make coming out of the big fights that happened over the last few weeks in the world of boxing. So coming off of the Tank fight weekend and coming off of Better Bivol from a couple weeks ago. Going to look at all the fighters involved in all of that and run through some of the fights that I think should come in the next little while. So that is what is coming up on the podcast today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Let's dive in and look at some of the overvalued teams in Major League Baseball. The Major League Baseball season is rapidly approaching, and for some teams, that means that the time where they're going to very much disappoint a lot of people is rapidly approaching. And so today, we are looking at the 5 overvalued, most overvalued teams in Major League Baseball going into this year. Let's begin with the Cleveland Guardians. Their win total from Vegas is at 83.5. And so I think that this is a team that is quite a bit overrated or overvalued right now. They have an elite level bullpen and a couple of good starters, but I don't think that is enough this year to get them through. You have Jose Ramirez, who's excellent offensively. They freed up a little bit of money with a couple of moves that they made with the Blue Jays, but I still don't see this as a team that can repeat what they did a season ago. And maybe there is just a little bit of remembering what happened in the playoffs and stuff like that. But I just, the bullpen is awesome. And so they are going to win quite a few 2-1 games. But aside from Ramirez, I don't see this team hitting enough to be able to make any kind of noise. And now, one thing I will say, like I have 2 teams from the AL Central and 2 teams from the NL Central. So the coastal elite, as I sit here in landlocked Calgary, Alberta, Canada. But the one thing that gives me a bit of a pause with some of these things is, I mean, someone's going to have to win these games in these divisions. And that's what happened last year in the Central, is that everyone just got to kick the tar out of Chicago and they were able to get a few playoff teams in there. And so there is that risk that you just get too beat up on what is, from the start of the season, a worse Chicago team. And you're going to be able to get quite a few wins that way, but I just don't know how much was repeatable from Cleveland a season ago. Up next, I have St. Louis. Their win total is at 76.5, and so I just think like Goldschmidt's gone. Arenado is as good as gone, and honestly, by the time you're watching this, he might be gone. I think they're gonna have to take a step back, and I think they still have a few like big league ready pieces, no doubt, but I do think that there is a very high probability that as this thing goes sideways, they can be a team that really can load up at the trade deadline and get a few good pieces back, but probably fall off as the season goes along. I told you we're going to be sticking central for most of these today. It is the Kansas City Royals. I have them right now, 82.5 is the total. Look, I like Witt a lot, and they made some really smart moves last offseason that put them in a position where they could just be a good baseball team and just get in. But I don't know if they built around it enough going into this year. And so I think they are a team that is almost there offensively and almost there with the pitching staff and almost there with the bullpen and just needed to bolster things a little bit more if they were going to really take advantage of the momentum they had coming off of last season. Speaking of which, the Baltimore Orioles at 88.5. I love so many pieces on this team. They have, look, I'm not breaking news to you. They have an amazing core that they should be building around. All they did this offseason was lose, basically. Like Santander, not amazing, but that's a loss. Corbin Burns, leaving, I think, really hurts an average pitching staff. And so that's what they stay. It's an average pitching staff. And so not doing anything this offseason, maybe this is part of it, is that I'm a little pissed they didn't do anything, because it feels like you're wasting some very good years with this ball club. And so I just feel like it is a team that is in a bit of a difficult spot. And this is not how you win in the American League East. As a lifelong Blue Jays fan, trust me, this is not how you win in American League East. But you look at the East right now, like the Yankees, they take a bit of a step back, but only a minor one. And like we can get into the Yankees thing, but obviously the pieces that they added do not equal Juan Soto. Like that hurts a little bit, but the bullpen's better and all that. I don't want to legislate if the Yankees are actually that good or not, but I think conservatively, let's say the Yankees take a minor step back. Well, the Red Sox, I think, take a big step forward. And the Blue Jays, while swinging and missing a lot in free agency, they still got better with the aforementioned Santander and Scherzer and adding quite a few pieces to the back end of that bullpen. They are not a fantastic team, but they are certainly a better baseball team than the one that finished the season a year ago. And so there is, I think, a bit of a concern that Baltimore might take half a step back this season. Still be competitive, might even still be a playoff team. And honestly, they will, I think, going away, have the best record of all 5 teams that is mentioned in this segment. But in terms of getting them to 90 wins again, I just don't think they have the pitching for that right now. The last one, the Milwaukee Brewers. They're at 81.5. And I look at this team and I don't really see a 500 ball club here. They have just consistently lost a piece. And now that they're starting to get some pieces back for them, but even those are a little underwhelming. Like Nestor Cortez for Devin Williams, that's just not going to, it's going to move the needle, but in a wrong way. And they lose Willy Adames. There's just not a whole lot going on now with Milwaukee. And so I just don't see how they get a whole lot done and again, the Central Division, a little bit weaker this year, but I still think that, I think Cincinnati got better. I think I know the Cubs got better with the acquisition of Tucker. And yeah, they lose Bellinger, but I think the Cubs are going to be quite a bit better. And so I think that Milwaukee takes a step back here just by being a bit of a mid team right now. It is just about time for the start of the Major League Baseball season, and it is an important one for the Toronto Blue Jays and for a number of players on the Toronto Blue Jays. So today, we are going to be looking at players who could bounce back for the Blue Jays, who I think will bounce back for the Blue Jays in the 2025 season. We begin with the obvious, and it is Bo Bichette. This one, again, it's obvious. There is no way that he hits 225 in a contract year for the Blue Jays. There is literally no way that is happening. His career BABIP, batting average on balls in play, is 338. Last year, it was 265. The hard hit rate was down a touch, but not enough to validate that level of an issue. Normally, batting average on balls in play, it's the whole, oh, that one it's going to look like a screamer in the whatever, but you got to hit them where they ain't and all those things. This kind of normalizes that a little bit. And so when you have a dramatic drop in your BABIP, generally that means a touch of unluckiness. And now there is some things where Bo was not as unlucky on, right? Like he didn't hit the ball as hard. His chase rate was the same, but his contact rate on pitches outside of the zone was the lowest of his career. And so I do think that there is a little bit of that going on, that teams are kind of expanding the zone a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more on him. And as he was becoming a little bit desperate and a little bit more frustrated as the season went on, he got a little bit more chase happy and was missing on some of those. So if there is a little bit more discipline there, I think he's going to be okay. I think that there is a real all-star potential in Bo Bichette for this season and for seasons beyond. I think that this is genuinely a guy who could be one of the better players in baseball. I don't think he's going to crack our top 10 list or anything like that, but I do think that there is a very, very, very good player in there. And I would be surprised if you don't see him come out at some point here this season for the Toronto Blue Jays. Also, primed, I think, for a breakout is Alejandro Kirk. He is someone who, like, anytime you watch any broadcast that he is on, everyone is talking about how just he is absolute aces when it comes to being a hitter. And he's just such a professional hitter is something that you hear around him. And so I would be surprised if there was a fall off for him, and not just a real breakout. He hit 269 in the second half last year, including 321 in July and 297 in September and a little bit into October there. Only 5 home runs too. I think he is a much better power hitter than that. And so I think as he gets accustomed to playing catcher every day a little bit more often, I think that you'll get back to seeing the offensive player that the Blue Jays quite frankly, desperately need him to be. So I think that there is a real bounce back potential in Alejandro Kirk here for the upcoming season. I think that would be such a huge boost to this offense. Another one that doesn't seem to be talked about a whole lot. Davis Schneider finished with an average under 200 last season. And look, I don't know if he's going to be a guy who is hovering around the Mendoza line a lot. And even when we're looking at a potential bounce back, I don't think that is him this year either. But I do think it's the power that should still be a factor for him. And honestly, like it's strange, but I do think that less playing time for him is actually going to help him down the stretch of the season here. Or not down the stretch of this, well, down the stretch of the season, but overall, like they started out with him and he was on fire, but he was only playing every couple of days. And then the offense was dreadful. So he had to play every day. And you could see as those times were extending, he was kind of getting worse and worse. And so I think with better organizational depth and him kind of coming in a little bit more spot duty is really actually going to help him stay fresh and stay on top of what teams are trying to do to him in that batter's box. And so I really do think that this is a guy who has bounce back potential. And if he can get to those power numbers that he had even just a couple of seasons ago, that is, we've talked about it, such a boost for this Blue Jays team. Because as we've talked about, like the top of the lineup is good with Bichette, and there's been some talk about him leading off. Bichette, Springer, Vladdy, Santander. That is a good 1 through 4, however you want to organize them. That's a good 1 through 4. If you can get Kirk to be a bounce back guy and have that power as your number 5. If you can have a Davis Schneider a couple of times a week, be a bounce back guy and be someone who can hit 20 home runs from the bottom third of your order. Now all of a sudden we got 6 that you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with. I would imagine that part of that is a bit of a with Schneider would be a switching on and off with a Will Wagner, who was unbelievable a season ago. And so you have to think there's a bit of a coming down there. But if those two can kind of balance each other off, then again, you're starting to see where there could be some improvement for this Blue Jays team. I think there's going to be a lot of improvement. Like you want to talk about Blue Jays bounce back candidates, just the Blue Jays in general, I think will be a bounce back candidate this season. And I don't think it's going to be as bad as last year was. And I do think that with the opportunity that some of these kids are going to get and the potential for them to really kind of break out, that is going to be, I think, very important for the Toronto Blue Jays. So that is going to do it for the baseball podcast today. We're going to do this in 2 parts. And honestly, I said today, the boxing one's probably going to be pushed to tomorrow now, as we're kind of extending everything with me off on vacation. So make sure you are following along on my social medias. I am at Primetime Klein, basically everywhere. Twitch.tv/PrimetimePK. The live streams, as you probably noticed, falling off a little bit with me not being around. So that's going to pick up again when we come back here in April. But if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give this a like. Give me your thoughts in the comments. I can't imagine I'm batting 1,000 on things you agreed with. So let me know in the comments. I try to reply to them as quickly as I can. And give me a subscribe on here. We got a lot more great baseball stuff coming your way going into next week. Next week is basically all baseball. The international series is starting. So next week, we're going to be looking at the win totals in the National League and my playoff picks there. Then we're going to look at some undervalued teams. We looked at overvalued today. We're going to look at, we looked at breakouts today, or bounce back today. We're going to look at some fall offs for the Blue Jays and players, coaches on the hot seat. So a lot to get to as the week rolls on. So you're going to want to subscribe and keep it locked here for all the great content around Major League Baseball and everything else in the world of sports. So thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you again later. I am out.